Well, it looks like we're about to get started, right?
Exactly. Let's pull up your screen if that's okay for you.
Yeah, sure.
And now we get off the stage.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to Data Bash. Looks like we're going to be starting our session here in a few minutes. Great event with a number of speakers that have gone before us, finishing this up, last one of the day. Any thoughts about being last, Warwick?
Well, it works out as a good time zone for both you and I. So
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good way to finish off the day for everybody who hopefully has had a fantastic day of learning from some fantastic sessions previous to us, and hopefully we're able to give you something to really, really look at for the rest of the day. So yeah.
All right, Warwick, you want to kick us off?
I do, given we've just kicked over, why not? Okay, so welcome everybody. Thanks for coming along. I hope you've had a fantastic day so far at Data Bash. For the final session of today in this particular track, Ginger and I are going to take you through developing with Spark for Microsoft Fabric with Copilot. So with that, I'll hand over to my co-presenter for today's session, Ginger, to introduce herself.
Thank you very much, Warwick. My name is Ginger Grant. I am a Microsoft Data Platform MVP and a Microsoft Certified Trainer. I run my own data consultancy and have enjoyed using Power BI since it was in Excel, and am now deep into doing Fabric. So I put my contact information if you want to get a hold of me later on. Honestly, the best place is on X, formerly known as Twitter, because I'm on there way too much. Warwick, what about you?
So, a bit like Ginger, I'm a data platform MVP. I'm the founder and principal consultant with SQL Masters Consulting down here in Australia. I have formerly been an MCT, but I let that lapse. So, but that doesn't stop me from doing training. So, like Ginger mentioned, my contact details are here as well. And so, yes, you can reach me on X or Twitter. Ginger, have you found it hard to start calling it X and stop calling it Twitter?
I just call it Twitter, and I'm figuring that anybody who knows it doesn't know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. So, if you've got any questions at all about this session or anything around the data platform, reach out to both Ginger or I with our contact details that we have got here, and they will be at the end of the session today for you. So with that, what are we going to be covering off today, Ginger?
Well, we're basically going to be talking all about Apache Spark and Copilot. Getting to know how Apache Spark works, and then, of course, how it works inside of Fabric, and then better understanding how you can integrate Copilot within it.
Okay.
So let's kick this off with Spark. And Spark is really an open source language that allows you to do a lot of really cool stuff. As a matter of fact, there are even a number of different languages that you can do. Copilot, Spark was developed as part of a contest in 1989 to try to determine who has the best algorithm. And a bunch of graduate students from Berkeley went and looked to see how they could win, and they thought that the best way would be to then, of course, develop an entirely new process for loading data into memory so that they could multi-process the data very, very quickly. Really cool idea, really cool concept. Didn't get them the win at all. They didn't even come in the top 10. But they decided to make that into a open source product, and it became part of the Apache Collective in 2012. So it does a whole lot of really cool stuff when it comes to rapidly processing data in memory. It basically chunks it all up and puts it all back together, and that really helps it do iterative algorithms and process that very well.
Okay, so with that, we've got 4 major components, and with Apache Spark being the foundational or core functionality of that, right? We've got Spark SQL, which allows us to run standard SQL queries. Starting with Spark 3.0, Spark supports the anti-SQL standards. And so this is from a data platform person on the Microsoft side of things, that might be a little bit different on what we're used to using from a T-SQL side of things, but it's only a slight variation, okay? But if you've been using Synapse, okay, you would have had some access to Spark previously, right? That's a slightly earlier version, and what it supports is slightly different to what you get in Fabric. Okay, Spark Streaming, that gives us the ability to process huge amounts of data streamed rather than waiting for that to come in place and then be processed in a batch format. Okay, the Mlib, or machine learning library, that provides a set of machine learning algorithms designed to be used with Spark. And so many standard algorithms have been included into this library for you to be able to use. And then Graphx, that gives us the ability to analyze data using a collection of nodes and relationships. Okay, and so this is where things are graphed out, and the nodes are the entities. Okay, so people, for example, and then we've got relationships, which is how do these people know each other. Okay, so a perfect example, MVPs. Both Ginger and I are MVPs, and our initial relationship was via that. Well, actually, it wasn't, because when we first met many years ago, it was at Past Data Summit, but that's another story in itself. And so this kind of analysis is often done to analyze social media, email, or intelligence gathering to determine who knows who.
Bring me back, Warwick. As Past Summit's coming again. I remember when we first met, that was fun. There's a number of different languages that are supported in Spark as well. So most of the time, you'll hear all about Python. A little bit of tip about Python: it wasn't really named after snakes. It was named after Monty Python, as the people who developed it were a fan. Scala is what it is most often used by the people who wrote it, and that's what this icon used here. A lot of people have used it for R and Java, but I went to the Spark and AI conference some years ago, and they mentioned that 90% of the Spark API calls are used running Spark SQL, which is a form of ANSI SQL. So you don't necessarily have to know a ton of Python to be doing a lot with Spark, especially if you're doing data manipulation, since a lot of it is done with SQL, which we all know and love.
And so if you've been using machine learning, then more than likely you've written some Python. Okay, moving across to start and use that with Spark, we may need to rewrite things. Okay, and the reason for that is that Spark itself isn't using resilient distributed data sets, right? It will not scale. And so a friend of ours recently had a client who wanted to use Spark so that they could improve the performance of their machine learning model. They added more compute clusters and were shocked to find out that nothing happened. Well, except it cost them a little bit more. And then what the reason behind this is that because what they had written in Python was relying on pandas. Okay, and pandas is a very popular data frame set, but the problem is that in the Spark ecosystem, they don't scale. But fortunately, in 2019, Spark added Koala's data frames. Now, if you haven't really come across those, Ginger and I had a joke recently, and she's smiling right now, is because for those of you who may not have come down to Australia, but koala bears, and it is just funny how people name different things about different animals. And so, yes, so koalas and data frames in data, it sort of, gives us a little bit of a smile. But the thing is that they are identical to pandas, but they work with Spark. Okay, so Koala data frames, they scale and allow you to improve that performance by adding those compute clusters as the data will be processed across all nodes.
So one thing about Spark in Fabric specifically is you'll see it inside of the data engineering and data science experiences. And one of the real big improvements that you'll notice if you've used it a lot in Synapse is it starts a lot faster. And that is a real big benefit. You don't have to create your own pool either. You've got a default pool that is created for you. Now, if you don't like that default pool, of course, you can always create your own. And of course, you get the same Interact notebook for writing code inside of Spark. And it really tightly integrates with your lakehouse. So you don't have to write data connections to connect to all the data that you might want to be processing. You just need to add that lakehouse to your notebook, and then you have the ability to access everything within it. And of course, the orchestration inside of Fabric using pipelines is really super easy because you can schedule your notebooks inside of a pipeline by just adding them as part of it, and the Spark jobs will run as part of that pipeline.
Yeah, Ginger, as you mentioned, right? So when starting things up in Fabric, you've got that pool available to you, right? But for those of you who may have been using Synapse previously, okay, when that first started up, you needed to create your dedicated pool. You needed to load your libraries, and then you were able to start work. Well, when working with notebooks in PySpark, it means that you get a couple of options available to you. Okay, and so we can see here we've got our Python libraries or PySpark. Right, we've got those libraries which are automatically available to us, and therefore things just start up so much more quickly so that we can get working and do what we want to do. Okay, but we're also able to choose different things, or I shouldn't say things, choose different versions that we want to be able to use in our dedicated pool for what we want to do. Okay, and so as the in Fabric, when we're loading that up, the set of libraries we use, Azure SDK for Python, right, is the set of libraries that work that allow us to manage what we're doing, look at our runtime or our data needs. Okay. We mentioned about there is that difference between what was available inside of Synapse compared to what is in Fabric. And so with that, we want to just, it's a slight variation, but if you haven't moved on from Synapse, this is a perfect opportunity for you to move forward on utilizing PySpark in Fabric.
So one thing that I really wanted to talk a bit about, because I know that in a data space, people are not so familiar with all things Python. So Spark SQL is really what is used a lot of time to do the different data manipulations and data engineering that you might need to do to get your data in a format that you want to use for reporting. So Spark SQL is a native part of Spark, as Warwick mentioned earlier. And you can use the magic command, which is %% to write whatever SQL that you want to inside of a notebook in Spark. So you don't have to necessarily learn a ton of Python. you do a lot with SQL. Now, unfortunately, it is ANSI SQL, and ANSI SQL is not the same as T-SQL, which, of course, if growing up in a SQL Server environment, you may be more familiar with. But hey, that's what AI is for, to easily convert that over. If you write it inside of T-SQL, you can have Copilot change it to Spark SQL for you.
And with that, right, so we can see we've got two different methods, okay? And so the first method that we see here is when we're actually in writing Spark SQL, okay? Now it looks a bit odd. We've got these things at the front where we're creating something, and we're saying spark.sql, and then we can see inside of brackets and inside of double quotes, here's a select statement, okay? Now, for me, the easiest way to think about this is inside of T-SQL, we can write dynamic SQL where we create our statement inside of a variable, and we pass it off and execute. And this is very similar to what we're seeing here. Or, as Ginger mentioned, using the magic commands, it looks like we can just create the SQL statements. Therefore, it makes our lives a little easier. But because we are data people and we are used to using T-SQL, and Spark SQL uses ANSI SQL, there's those slight variations that Ginger mentioned.
So one of the things that I wanted to bring up is that it's possible that you don't have to use a Fabric environment. I know a lot of people who do a lot with different code, with writing different code, and let's just say that they like the way that they write it better. There are different tools, and if you get familiar with using one, you may want to continue using it. And hey, why not? You don't have to use anything but VS Code if you want to do that. You don't have to use a Fabric environment for that. It allows you a couple of different options when it comes to looking at things at the same time. Of course, to do that, you've got to set up your VS Code and do a couple of steps to it to be able to make it run. And the first thing you want to make sure that you do is install the JDK from Java, because you will need to use that inside of VS Code. Make sure you use that JDK link and not the JRE link. You'll also need Conda. Conda is a scaled down set of libraries used with Python for Spark. And you may have to give them your email. I've done it a couple of times, and one time I did, and one time I didn't, so maybe they have my email already. And also you need to install the Jupyter extension for VS Code to make your VS Code library look like to have that VS Code environment that you see inside of Fabric.
And so once you've got that initial stuff started off, to make your life easier, we do need to update the Java home environment variable, put in that path so that that's where it just points back to the JDK that was installed that Ginger mentioned just before. And so we're just stepping through this because we want you to have the details to be able to go away, do this at home for yourselves. What's the next step, Ginger?
Well, the next thing you need to do is modify the path, and we want to be really specific about this because we realize there's a lot of kind of complex stuff to do this, but once you've got it set up, hey, you're good to go with VS Code. So having all this information available to you will allow you to step through this at a later date if you do come across this video. So go to Control Panel, edit your system properties, and make sure that you click on the environment variables, which is where you are going to be modifying your path. And you do need to make sure that you add Java Home bin and then Conda bin to your path so that it can find it.
And then lastly, inside of VS Code, one of the beauties about VS Code is that you get to pick and choose what you want to do. And we do that with extensions. And so for you to be able to work inside of VS Code, we need to go and install the Synapse extension. Now, for those of you who may not have used this before, the beauty of it is, especially if you're in a really tightly locked down secure environment, okay, you can provide these extensions to your security team. They can review it, say this is all okay, and make it available for you to then grab that v6 file and install that into your environment, and away you go.
That's a really great point, Warwick, because I know that I have worked with a client recently, and that was the issue that they had, is that they had to provide this information to their security teams so that they would have the ability to do that. So kind of put this together for them, and also wanted to help everybody else out. So once you've got all that set up, all you need to do is select your workspace, make sure that you're signed in, and then you can select any of your notebooks and start working inside of VS Code without having to, and using your Fabric environment. So what I wanted to do is basically show you those steps so that you have a good idea of what is what you need to do to be able to set up your environment so that you can do that. So let's get started. So first off, we want to make sure that we are going to be installing our Synapse extension. So and I think it's really kind of funny that for Fabric it's called the Synapse extension, but you know, hey, that's what Microsoft decided to call it. So even though we're using in Fabric, we're going to be using this Synapse extension. Kind of look and see it installs pretty easily, and it does give us that how-to. So next I'm going to go ahead and then type badly to get to the Java location so that I can add the JDK that I need in order for it to work as well. So that's adoptum.net, and it is Tamarin. Love these fun names. And then of course it is releases. And so if we go there, not only will we see a whole bunch of different releases for, make sure I get the right version, for Windows, but also for everything in Linux as well. We got a lot of different ones in here. Going to need to scroll down to get to Windows 64 and make sure that I get the JDK, and I like the MSI, so that's the one that I'm going to install. Let's go ahead and save that so that I've got it available. Don't ask me why, I'm just paranoid that way. And then go ahead and run that now that it has downloaded. Of course, it opens up the wrong screen. Let me fix that. And go ahead and install this. I should have made it done run as administrator. When you do that, make sure that you pick that. So I've got everything selected here that I need. So I'm going to go ahead and install the Java JDK. And I'm going to go ahead and install the stuff that it needs. That's one step down. Wait, there's more. I also want to make sure that I've got my Jupyter notebook installed. So installed that. Now I'm going to do Miniconda. And I want to go ahead and make sure that that's installed, that I have the libraries that I need. Again, same process. I learn how to type. And go ahead and save and install this. And by the way, you only have to do this once. Once you've got this installed, then you're good to go. So this time I do remember that I do want to run it as administrator. And I'm going to go ahead and click next. Get this installed. Yes, of course I agree. Sure, we'll let everybody do it. Go ahead and install that. And since I didn't want me to clear the cache upon completion, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Set that up. One thing about once this is set up, I'm sure that you'll forget all these steps that are required to do that, because you can just use it after this.
So while that's running, Ginger, once we've got it up and running, we don't need to do any modifications to this, do we?
No, as a matter of fact, when you open up your notebook, when you save it, it'll save it not only to your environment, but it'll update the cloud as well. So I can go ahead and say next. And then I am good to go. I don't want to start it up because I wanted to go ahead and do that inside of my notebook. I've got all of this set up correctly. Make sure I've got my path correct. Going to add the Java home bin. Make sure I've got my slashes going the right way. Oops. Make that right. And then, of course, I want to also then add Conda. I'm going to add that to my environment here. And then I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And then you can go back inside of Visual Studio and make sure that I am logged in to my Fabric environment. So, oh, I need to set my work folder too, because I'm going to be having a local copy. So I'm going to set that. So let's see. Set this up so that I've got a folder where it's going to live. I'll just give it a new folder, call it Fabric. That is my local folder. Make sure that I'm signed in. And it says, yep, you signed in. Naturally, I did that in another window, so I can close this window because it automatically went to my browser. And now I am set to start looking at my code. So what I'm going to do is then stupid thing again. Need to get into my workspaces. I'm going to go ahead and shut this down to make sure that happens. And that's my local path. Wanted to make sure that that's set up so that you have an idea of where that's going. So then need to click on the Synapse icon. Should have thought about that. Select my workspace. These are all the workspaces that I have. I have one called Fabric. Got all of my notebooks here that I've got inside of that one workspace. Yeah, I've got a couple things, one or two here. And you can see when I've last updated them. I'm going to go ahead and open up Data Wrangler. Notice I've got a cloud button with a little arrow next to it. And to do that, I want to go ahead and click on that. I've got the workspace selected. And then click on the notebook to download it. And it's downloading it to my local folder. And then I can just go ahead and open that up. And now I can start using my environment. So just go ahead and look at picking the right kernel and then selecting everything that I need to be able to run this. So that's pretty much how you get started inside of Spark and VS Code.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay.
So let's move to Copilot.
Yeah. So Copilot, lots of chatter about Copilots and everything, but in what we're talking about in this session, we don't need an F64 license for quick measures inside of Power BI. However, to access Copilot in the Power BI service, okay, the workspace has to be either running an F64 or premium capacity. Okay, if we want to be able to use Copilot for Power BI desktop, we need to have admin member or contributor access and at least access to a workspace that is assigned to an F64 capacity or higher. So our premium capacity, P1 or higher, that has Copilot enabled on that capacity. Now, just so that everybody is aware, Ginger and I were talking about this during the week. There was recent announcements, okay, around the premium capacity, in that you can't buy those premium capacity anymore, and moving forward, you're going to have to look at going to a F SKU, right? Or your premium is going to get upgraded. So you need to be aware of that. The other thing that we need to just point out for you to be able to access that Copilot is that you need to have your administrator whitelist your section, whitelist your access to the environment inside of the Fabric admin. Okay, so if you weren't aware of the changes in the licensing, there are blog posts and everything out there talking about when this is happening, what you need to do. Make sure you go and have a look at that so that you are covered.
This is a really cool slide, Warwick. Did you happen to make this using Copilot?
I did, actually. So it was a little bit of fun to go about putting in the parameters and saying, hey, give me this image, what can I get? So yeah, why not use some AI generated content in our session, but we do use some AI in it. So that was cool.
Yeah. But we did write this ourselves. We know this wasn't AI, so, but it's kind of neat. So one thing that everyone likes about AI is that it can generate code for you. Well, you know what? Let's face it, as much as we would all love to have our organizations that we work with purchase the SKUs that we need to be able to access Copilot features and functionality, not everybody's going to do that. But Microsoft has included some code generation tools inside of Fabric that are really pretty cool, and especially if you are trying to learn how to use Python, and if you've not been familiar with that, then it's a kind of a neat feature that you can use Data Wrangler. Not exactly AI, but hey, it writes code for you, so that's good stuff. It's really designed to help fix up your data. So any kind of problems that you might have with data formats or maybe the way you brought it in, you can have Data Wrangler write that code for you in Spark.
And so when we're actually working in our workbooks, right, we're able to actually have Fabric create Python code. Okay, now I'll own up right now. My Python code is terrible, but Data Wrangler makes that a whole lot easier for me to be able to easily generate code, be able to view and analyze that data inside of the workbook, and go, you know what, inside of Wrangler, I'm going to generate the code that I need, and it can place it straight into my notebook cell. Okay, and the beauty of this, we don't need an F64 SKU. Now, as Ginger mentioned, it's not Copilot, but it is code generation that allows us to be more effective in what we do. And so with that, let's dive in and have a look at what does Data Wrangler look like.
All right, let me stop sharing and have you take that over, Warwick.
Okay.
Easier said than done, I know.
Okay, so we can see my screen. That's good. So what we need to do is once we've connected in or logged into our app.fabric.microsoft.com, if you're not used to that, when you first log in, you've got the screen here that we're seeing, which just gives you links out to all of the documentation. But what we want to do is we want to come down here and we're going to go to our data engineering. And the first thing that we want to do is have a look at our workspaces. So the workspace we're going to work in here, we've got some items available to us, etc. But from a data wrangling point of view, what we're going to do is, first off, is create a new workbook. I shouldn't say workbook, a new notebook.
I know what you meant.
Yeah. When this finally fires up. Okay, so we've got our new notebook, and the first thing that we want to do is we want to be able to add our data source. And so we're going to add our lakehouse. And I'm already got one because we've loaded up some data. And I'm going to choose our DSI demo. That'll won't take long. And so we can see here we've already got some data that we've loaded. And given that I'm from Australia, we've loaded this one up on beer consumption per person per capita, right? So that's what we're going to. No, not at all. So that's what we're going to initially work with. Okay, so we've got our data source added. Then we're going to write our first piece of code, and I've just got it prepared earlier. I'm not going to type because, in the words of Buck Woody, don't type inside of demos. All sorts of things can go wrong. And so we're just going to have a look at our beer consumption. We're just going to get the top 1,000 rows. We'll kick that off. It won't take long to go and run and collect that information. But what we're going to do is have a look. Once it has finally come up, we'll be able to have a look at and see the type of data. And you may notice that the column headings are terrible. Okay, and so this is potentially common on what you would see on with certain data that you are receiving, and you're loading it up, that we can see here we've got column C0, C1, C2, C3, okay, because the data that we've got, it might not be appropriate column headings that we can import, and it's really, really bad, okay? So with this information, what we're going to have a look at now that we've run our first piece of code in our first cell and we've got some data, you can see up the top here that Data Wrangler is now available for us. By opening that up, and we choose our data frame that we just ran, okay, which got us that first 1,000 rows of data. And we can see here's our 1,000 rows of data. It gives us some information about those columns. Okay, so one of the things that as data people, to make our lives easier, that what we would want to be doing is look at, first off, let's change these column headings so that they're a little bit more meaningful. And so if we come down to our schema, we can see here we've got a number of things available to us, one of which is our change column. So we're going to choose which column we're going to change. Our C0, we're going to give it a new name, and this is just a country column. We can apply that, and that's gone and changed that column. So we'll quickly go and do that for all of our other columns. We'll change our C1 column, and you can see that dynamically it's picking up those column names, and this is going to be our country code. We'll go to column 3, which is our year. And our last one, and this is going to be our and we've applied that. Now the beauty of it is, you'll see down here we've got cleaning steps, okay? And so that means that if we've made a mistake on what we're doing, I can go back on 0.5 and it will show me and say, oh, you were at consumption, no, we're going back to C3, and so you can roll back those changes that you've done, okay? But we're going to stick with that. We've got our column changes that we've made changes to, and we can come up here and we can see add code to notebook. And so if we click on that, we can see here that we've got the generated code and I haven't typed any bit of code except click a few buttons and give some column names their new headers. So we'll go add, and if I scroll down, we can see we've now got our updated code. If I execute that, that will go and make those changes to the underlying data frame that we're using, and we've now returned that same data, but it's now in with those particular columns. Now, given what we're using and our consumption, right, it's currently a string value, and so we want to change that more to a numeric value to make our lives easier with using it. Now, the other thing, like everything for us, we've got multiple places that we can make these changes. I can go up the top like I did just prior, or down inside of our results, we can see our data wrangler, and I can come back into where we were before. Now, what we're going to do here is our change column type. Very quickly, I'm going to choose our consumption. Come on, there we go. And then we're going to go our float 32 and apply that change, add code, go. And we'll come down. Here's our new code for that. We'll execute that. Won't take long. But what we've been able to easily see inside of this demo is, with writing no code at all, Data Wrangler has made my life easier in, one, I've generated code to be able to manipulate the data inside of my data set, inside of my lakehouse. So with that, I will...
You can stop sharing. I can probably take that back over. We will see.
There we go.
Okay. It is not letting me do this. Well, see if I can get it to. Present again. Resize this maybe. It'll. What I did want to talk about next while we mess around with getting this to present. Yeah, I'm not able to get it to. Warwick, maybe you can see if you can advance the screens, because I can't get it to share a screen.
Sure.
See the button, I'm clicking on it, and you can see nothing is happening when I'm doing that. See if you can share your screen, perhaps, or...
There we go.
Let's just talk about it, and hopefully maybe I can get it back when it's time for me to do some presenting. So let's talk a little bit about Copilot and what you can do with it. Now, what Warwick showed was really pretty cool, because it does allow us to see everything that we can inside of, what we can get to Copilot, what we can get, it to do. But if with Copilot, you have it actually generating all sorts of code, doing different visuals for you, all sorts of fun and exciting thing. Unfortunately, if you do have the Fabric trial, you cannot use Copilot. You do need to have that F64 SKU enabled to be able to do it.
Okay, and so inside of our notebooks, which we were just working with when I was going through with Data Wrangler, and I only showed a little bit about that, right? But using Copilot, what does it allow us to actually use, right? So we can generate or help us create charts. Okay, it's able to write code for us, and it's even able to document existing code. Now, a tip when you are using Copilot, make sure that you've added your lakehouse as a data source before doing anything with Copilot, okay? Because when you click Copilot, you can get we can then get started, but it means that if you haven't done that, because there's a startup process and everything that it goes through, and if you haven't added your data source, when you add your data source, it re-goes through everything over again, therefore taking a lot longer for us to do what we need to do.
So one thing that to remember is that when you click on that Copilot button, which is enabled inside of the environment with an F64, it's going to write some code for you. And all you have to do is click, and it will add magic commands that say load ext and then activate DS Copilot.
And so some of the magic commands that, we'll want to know about or learn and use, we want to use things like chat. So what does it do? It means, hey, ask a question about our notebook code. Pretty simple. It means, hey, can we go and generate some code for us? Describe, tell me what's going on inside of that data frame. Add comments. Makes it easy for us, right? So it's having a look at what the code is that we've already got and going and adding those comments to the code. Fix errors. We'll have a look at that in the upcoming demo, but these things are what we really want to know about when we are using Copilot inside of Fabric.
Great, Warwick. That's in addition to those, not only do they have magic commands with 2% signs, but also with 1. You can choose to set the output, to direct where you want it to be, clear the cache, and then, of course, describe your code, which is really, really helpful if you're looking at something somebody else has written. You're like, I have no idea what this does. And you can get it to comment for you as well.
And with that, when we are in there using it, we've got the Copilot pane, which we will see in the upcoming demo, where we're able to write code, say, hey, create this, and it'll generate, paste it into our workbook, our notebook, and we're able to even load data into data frames. So with that, I'll stop sharing because we'll go to the demo where Ginger will take us through Copilot or inside of, oh, don't do that one. Stop sharing. There we go. You should be good,
so
Ginger.
hopefully I should be able to share the screen now. Share screen. It is not letting me do that. So let me see if I can't get it to share the screen. Only Kay saying that I might have some kind of a blocker. I didn't see before, so let's see if I can't find it. Not seeing that. Blocking anything. So let me try this.
So it won't let you go share screen.
Yeah, I get the concept, just the button doesn't press.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not letting me do it. Doesn't look like I'm going to be able to do that demo work because it's not letting me select the share screen capabilities. And I'm trying to get it to.
We've got a couple of minutes.
Well, I wish I could get it to, yeah, I mean, I'm seeing there's a button there, seeing share screen. see anything that's preventing me from doing it. It is not letting me. Well, I'm just going to have to talk to it because it just won't let me do what I want to do. So, Warwick, why don't you stay presenting and we'll talk about the kinds of things that you can do inside of Copilot. If it was possible for me to do the demo. So one of the things that you can do is you can have it document your code. You can have it write code for you. Using the pane, you can have it just paste code over. It is something that you can allow it to do, create visuals for you. It can indeed generate code in R. It can describe your code when you're doing it. It can document your code. Now, one thing that it does also keep in mind is that it does take about, I'd say 5 minutes to run. Now, there's a number of different libraries that it has to run when you tell it that you want Copilot to run. And they, here we go. Now I'm able to share my screen. So let me do that. Great. So now that it is sharing, we can take a look at Copilot. All right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and have it run Copilot. So notice here, I need to, I can see my notebook that's got everything inside of it. And
Ginger,
I can, yeah.
We're just seeing the demo for Copilot slide deck. We're not actually seeing.
Oh, not seeing it. That's a shame. Well, too bad. I finally got so I could share screen and it didn't do it. Well, that's obviously not going to help this demo out any. So if I was able to run Copilot, I would be able to show you that it would run a bunch of run a bunch of different elements, and then I would be able to have it write code for me. But it doesn't look like that is in the cards today. So with that, Warwick, why don't you switch to the slides and we'll just finish up for today.
All right. So that was a bit of a disappointment for both of us because the last demo is really showing a lot of stuff inside of Fabric with Copilot, with what you can do, stepping through those magic commands to make it nice and simple and go, I've already got some code, comment this, what does it look like? Okay, but what have we covered off today? Well, we started off with an introduction to what is Apache Spark, okay, where it came from, how we went about doing things. Then what is Apache Spark inside of Microsoft Fabric? We've had a look at the licensing requirements in that for certain features we can get away without having an F64 SKU, but if we are wanting to use Copilot, we do need the F64 SKU. We ran through the data wrangling, and while it's not Copilot itself, it does do very similar to what Copilot can do in that it can auto-generate code to then add into your notebooks to make life very, very simple for you. We ran through the setting up of your environment to use VS Code if need be, and then we were going to look at, with that last demo, incorporating all of that utilizing Copilot. So with that, we'll go to our, if we've got a couple of minutes. If there are any questions, we're happy to take those. But once again, to round out, here's our contact details again for Ginger. And Ginger, we noticed that on this one, we've now, so your Pure AI, can you tell us a little bit about Pure AI?
Yeah, I write a monthly column for them talking about all different things AI, including things like, hey, I know that I didn't get a chance to do the demo, but your kids are probably using AI to write papers. And I have a list of detectors that can show you that they can get caught doing that. TLDR, it's GPT-0 will let you know, or zero GPT, excuse me, will let you know if any code or any words that somebody's sending you, if they were real or if they were done by a Copilot. So something that you might want to check out as you're investing more into all things AI.
Okay. And rounding out, so once again, my contact details. As we mentioned at the top of the session, feel free to reach out, connect with both Ginger and I if you've got any questions about this session, but anything in general, especially if you are interested in what Ginger just mentioned about, how do you track whether what somebody is being sent is AI generated or not? And as we mentioned, everything that we've got in this session, we've actually generated, except for the images. I'm not that good at creating images. AI did help me in creating some of those images. So with that, yes, if there are any questions, comments, happy to take those. If not, we do hope that you've had a fantastic day at DataBash. I thoroughly enjoyed my time delivering this session for DataBash, and yeah. Anything else from?
It's been great presenting with you, and nice to be able to round out the session here at DataBash. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time, and hope you have a great rest of your day or night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you a lot for joining us during this session.